Hello and welcome to episode 104 of On My Studio Table. I'm so glad you could join me. I hope you're relaxing with a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or whatever beverage you choose. I have a cup of tea next to me while I'm making this video and also while I work on my stitching and so on. I'll be sharing with you the progress that I made on a block that I was having a bit of difficulty with, which I actually did finish. Also the new square for Words 2026 from last week and the new word for this week. We are on week 24, so we're nearly halfway through the year. Of course, I've been doing some more experiments with jelly printing. I have written 2 tutorials so far, and some of you have purchased them, which is wonderful. And I have another one which will be available when this video is over. I'll tell you a bit more about that as we go along. One of the lovely things that we enjoyed last weekend was a short drive down to the coast at St Helens, where there was an exhibition put together by Barbara Mellor and a group of friends that meet together regularly to stitch. And it was an exhibition of textile art. So my comfort coverlet, which is behind me, called Home is Here, was one of the entries, and another one was a piece that I did which was a finalist in the Tasmanian Art Quilt Prize a few years ago, called Wheels of Time. One of the features of the exhibition was a series of art quilts made by Barbara Mellor called the Mathinna series. And there was a little leaflet that you could take which had information about what was behind this series that she did. And she's written the story of Mathinna and then also Margaret Miller and other women who went through hard times in a period when women didn't have much status. So I will share some images of Barbara's art quilts. They are just amazing. The other people that were in the exhibition were also a mixture of finalists in the Tasmanian Art Quilt Prize in previous years and members of the group. The work was absolutely beautiful and so inspirational. And I'd just like to read to you the names of the participants. Barbara Mellor, of course, Leslie Lyons, Maureen Fisher, Susie Barton-Johnson, Cindy Watkins, Jessica Dobson, Sandra Champion, Rita Summers, Fran Bowden and Annie Maney. Annie Maney also for many years had a quilting shop in the town of St Helens. She is now mainly online and attending events, and she had a little shop set up there also, and the other members had items for sale too. And I did purchase a couple of things. I purchased some wool felt and also some new oven mitts made by Maureen Fisher because mine are a disgrace, to put it frankly. And they had little chickens on them and a lovely red binding, so it went well with my kitchen. So I'm going to share with you just a little bit of footage of the quilt show so that you can sit back and enjoy it and hopefully be inspired also. Also last weekend was the St Mary's Car Show. That is quite a big event. St Mary's is a little rural town, but the numbers expand in a big way during this weekend. And for both events, the exhibition, which was part of the Bay of Fires Arts Festival, and the St Mary's Car Show, the weather was absolutely perfect. No wind, sunshine, a cold start, but a very, very clear day, and it was just beautiful. Everyone was so pleased because that's the one thing, of course, that you really can't organise. I just got distracted then. A bird flew up near the window. I don't know if you could hear it, but it might have seen its reflection, I think. Anyway, the car show was very, very well attended. They had a huge range of vehicles. I mentioned last time that there was a bus and pedal cars, and the bus was there again, and also the pedal cars, in fact, more pedal cars than previous years, and lots of classic and vintage cars. There was live music in the street. Peter Cornelius, who is a blues musician, lives locally but has travelled the world throughout his career, was playing the music. There was plenty of food for sale through some of the businesses and also in the street, and it was just an amazing day. So I hope you enjoy the footage of this big event, which is run each year by a group of men, including my husband Ian. In my last video, I was explaining how I started to experiment with jelly printing on baby wipes. I've been using baby wipes for cleanup when I'm doing my jelly printing, and I didn't want to waste them. I've got some that are fragrance-free and alcohol-free, but they are like a fabric, and I really thought what a lovely thing that would be for stitching. Plus, I'd be saving something from landfill that would normally get thrown away. So I had a bit of a play and I came up with these, and they just remind me again of old frescoes or ancient wall paintings. And I've watched a few videos recently about the restoration of ancient wall paintings in churches, but also about room decorations in places like Pompeii. And a couple of videos ago, I think I shared some of that inspiration. I have since almost finished writing a tutorial about jelly printing on baby wipes and to get that ancient wall painting kind of effect. I'll just show you what I've done. So these are the ones that are going to be in the tutorial. I wanted to try a different colorway but still get a similar effect. And I ended up using several colors and then also changing them as I went along. I really like the effect. It just looks to me like paint that's been peeling, or if there's been a restoration, being very carefully revealed under layers and layers of paint. One of the churches that I watched, paintings were discovered quite a while ago but have only recently been restored. There were 20 layers of paint on top. And I think that they were probably painted over either during the time of King Henry VIII, at the time of the dissolution, or at the time of the Reformation. And my feeling is it was probably during the Reformation because wall paintings were seen as idolatry. Hopefully we know better now. So it was just fascinating to see how people had pictorially decorated rooms in churches or in homes. So these give me that kind of feeling. And the decorated room in the Pompeii one that I saw had these sorts of colours in it. And that's probably not surprising because I've been using some ochres. There's some orange ochre in this one, And sometimes I use yellow ochre and purple ochre and even black. And I did use a little bit of black mixed with some white in these. Then I added some foliage from around our home, and it just seemed to be like paintings or wall decorations emerging from layers and layers of paint, and some vestiges of the paint are still there. So it was just fascinating to actually be inspired by that, and I'm going to call it Inspired by Medieval Paintings. Some of them were not medieval, but a lot of them were, and mostly in the UK, and I just found that so interesting. And to see the colours that people use, some were faded, of course, or damaged so you couldn't tell what they were, but some are surprisingly vibrant. It's just absolutely amazing. So I'll put some links down below. But if you would like to achieve this effect, I have a new tutorial which will be ready at the end of this video, as I said, called Inspired by Medieval Wall Paintings, and you can purchase that at gonerustic.com. I would also like to say thank you to those who have been purchasing my other tutorials. The first part of this series is called Inspired by Ancient Frescoes, and the second one is called Inspired by Trees. And hopefully those who've purchased them are really enjoying the process. I vary between 2 and 3 layers depending on the effect that I would like, and sometimes even 4. But the tutorials explain all about that. Also, the natural binder that I'm focusing on using. There is another one called Natural Acrylic Medium, spelt ACRYLIK, which is available through the Natural Earth Paint website. And I've put a link down below. I am an affiliate. So if you click on that link and order anything from the Natural Earth Paint business, you'll help me earn a small commission. The other thing, of course, is that when you do another batch of jelly printing, you're left with more pieces to recycle. In this case, more baby wipes. All different colorways depending on the paints that I've used. And when I print over the top of them, that will affect the outcome, as you would see in the other baby wipes that I shared with you. Besides the baby wipes, I also have more backgrounds to work with. Some of these were just pieces of brown packaging paper, and some are roll-offs from other sessions. And I ended up using them to do my negative prints. So I wanted the positive prints to be on the baby wipes. My negative ones needed to be picked up on a separate piece of paper. And I rather like the effect of the brown paper showing through. So that's more just plain brown paper. Then I thought maybe I should do this over the top of my roll-offs. And that gave a really interesting effect because the colours from the roll-off shows through the negative print, which is where there was no paint at all. It picked up all the background paint from my plate, but not the paint that was under the leaves. And I just really find that interesting. The grey paint was what was underneath. So I kept doing that. And these will be probably done with yet another layer to make them into a complete print. But I'll have a think about what that's going to be. I really like this one. This was another negative print over the top of roll-off paper. And I really like the look of that one. So I think that could become something a bit special. This one hasn't had anything done on it yet, and nor has this one. These were from my tutorial, the roll-offs from my tutorial. So this is a really great way to make sure that you waste as little as possible. I also use up all the paint. When I mix up paint on my palette, because I'm using pigments and a binder, I don't waste any of it. If I'm finished what I want to do and there's still paint left on the jelly plate, I use one of my roll-offs or something to clean it. Even a baby wipe, which can be used later for new artwork. I'm going to develop some ideas for stitching on my jelly prints. I really needed to get my head around the jelly printing process. So I've been stitching on other things, but not on these yet. But stay tuned, it's coming. I finally finished number 16 of my blocks featuring the squares from Words 2026. I shared last time that I had come to a bit of a creative block with this particular one, and that I finally gained inspiration from another one of my blocks to do this flowing area here, which represents water. Then I used some gum leaves, cut off a print by the spotted quoll of actual gum leaves that have been photographed, I guess, on a black background. And they were only partial ones because I had only a strip about this wide that I was using for binding on my coverlet of comfort. So I decided to make them just near the edge. And I did an overcast stitch or a straight stitch around the edges, and then I did a fly stitch to represent the veins. I still had to think about what to do with the rest of it. I didn't feel like it needed a lot, so I wasn't necessarily thinking of doing a lot of embroidery around this area. And I tried a piece of couching just by laying some wool down, and I liked the look of it, so I ended up just stitching that down with straight stitches. After that, I outlined it with a line of quilting, which I have done on some of the other blocks as well. So I'm happy with that now, and I feel that it's now finished. We are now on week 24 of Words 2026. When we get to week 26, we will be halfway through this year-long project. And I know that I'm going to run out of space in my folder. I shared last time that I found a lovely leather compendium that I'm using for a mini art kit at our local rubbish dump, where there is a shop called a tip shop. We actually call the rubbish dump a tip. And I found this as well. So this is another display folder, similar to the one that I've used in here. So I'm going to make another cover, and that means there will be 2 volumes, if you like, of Words 2026. And then I'll put the other 26 blocks or squares in here. As I use them up, I'm actually photographing them and printing them out so that the pages are not blank and are still a record. So you can see here I've printed some out, and they are filling the gaps where I've used them. So these are all just photographs that I've printed out onto photo paper. That's one that I haven't done yet for Zephyr or Straight. I haven't done that one. Topsy Turvy is another one that's waiting for its block and build. And these 2, Gap and Pear. Pear I shared with you last time. This time the word was loose. But before I show you that, I'll just show you this. I have actually prepared a couple more backgrounds for my future squares. I do this in advance, sometimes because I don't feel like having to think too much. So all I do is arrange the fabrics and then invisibly baste them so that they're in place, and I'm ready for whatever comes up. I've used some of my own naturally dyed and printed fabrics. I also used a little bit of commercial fabric there, and a little bit of a transfer print that I did of a pastel rubbing. I have a stencil with circles on it, which you probably see in my jelly prints quite a lot. It's my favourite stencil. So I think that they're ready for whatever comes up next. It didn't take me too long to work out what to do for the new word for last week, which was loose. I immediately thought of leaves that fall off the trees. Eucalypts lose their leaves all year round. They're not a deciduous tree. Deciduous trees will lose their leaves only in autumn. But you'll find gum leaves or eucalyptus leaves on the ground at any time of the year. and they respond to drought conditions and so on. Shedding the leaves helps them to use less water, and they can survive a hot spell. Then I thought once I'd stitched them down, I would leave the threads loose from when I got to the point of the leaf, and then I did some quilting around each side of the leaf and left that loose as well. This is a piece of cord, and I use knotted cord sometimes also for added texture and dimension on my work. So I thought that added something to it, and it's, you know, loose knots. I've left them loose from the background. So it's talking about the idea of loose on a few different levels. This one has more neutral colours than usual. It has a little bit of aqua there and a little bit of orange here, but they're nearly all natural colours from natural dyes as far as the fabrics are concerned. The only exception is this leaf, which is cut again from the leaf fabric that I talked about with my portion block. For week 24, we need a new word, of course, so I'm going to pull one out of the pot, rummaging as usual to try and mix them up and also try to get only a single piece of paper. And I think that's what I've got. There we go. Attached. That's quite a loose one as well, excuse the pun, because our last word was loose, but you can interpret that in lots of different ways. You can be quite abstract just by attaching things to your square, or you can talk about being attached to someone and do something in reference to that. It could be a button attached to some clothing, a ribbon attached to somebody's pigtails, something that got attached to your hair that wasn't intended to. I remember my youngest sister, who had beautiful long blonde hair, went climbing in some pine trees once and got the pine tree rosin all stuck to her hair, and my mother had to cut a lot of it off. So that rosin actually attached itself to her hair, but it soon grew back, which was good. So I hope you enjoy this one. Some of these words seem to be a little bit easier to interpret, so I hope that you will find this one an interesting one to do.